All right, Rick, so talk to me a little bit about the conservation mission of Longneck Manor.
As my career evolved, at first it was just, hey, it's cool to work with these animals and go to Africa, and it was all about me. I've heard this from other people too. And then as you get older, you go, wait a minute, the animals in Africa aren't doing so well. It's not that much fun taking care of animals here when you know they're getting shot and they're losing their habitat. You know, habitat loss is probably even worse than poaching. You know, everybody knows about poaching, but they're losing the land. And so then you become committed to saving them in the wild. And that's what Longneck Manor is all about. Obviously, we want everybody that comes here to have a fabulous, wonderful, memorable experience, but it has to translate into saving animals in the wild. And that's the key here. Our mission is conservation. The purest definition is saving animals and habitats in the wild. How you do that is you help the communities in the wild, because the people living next to those animals have to have a benefit. If there's no benefit, they're going to shoot the animal, they're going to cut down the forest, they're going to sell everything to make it. But if you can do a sustainable, practices, ecotourism, bringing people over there. I bring people to Africa every year. I'm leaving in like 10 days to take another trip. Those things can really get people to understand, that there's more to saving animals than just coming here. That there's a greater mission, and it's one that has no finish line. We're always going to be working to save it, and it's always going to be challenging.
So what would you say to somebody that says, well, why do you have to breed them at these facilities? Why can't you just have the ones you have? And
good question.
Yeah, does that help the conservation effort?
Well, yeah, some people come here thinking we're a sanctuary, and which is a nice word, okay? I mean, I guess I'd like to live in a sanctuary, not a sanitarium, but a sanctuary. There's a fine line with me some days. Yes, But when a sanctuary is really where you put geriatric older animals, it's a retirement home. You don't breed them. That is more about individual animal welfare. What we're about is saving groups of animals and species in the wild. And to do that, you have to have an active breeding situation. Animals, especially young animals, are the best enrichment you can give them is that they breed and reproduce and raise young like they do in the wild, and then you keep them, or you work with just the best facilities in the country, and that's why we breed them. It's nice to have babies, and everybody likes to see babies, but it's also a sustainable, because we're not going to be able, if all the giraffes died in this country, it's not like we can go back to Africa and bring a bunch over. They won't let you do it anymore. It's very difficult to do with permits and disease protocols. So we've got to work with what we have, and we've got to be very careful genetically how we do that. So it's important to have a dynamic, growing group of animals and work with only the best facilities in the country.
So the animals that are bred here in human care, clearly they can't go into the wild. So how do these facilities help their wild counterparts?
The animals that are bred here could go back into the wild, but it would take a massive effort to rehabilitate them. They got to get used to predators. They got to get used to tick-borne diseases where they've lost their immunity. But what's more importantly is they act as ambassadors. They represent their counterparts in the wild. So if somebody feeds a giraffe here and falls in love with the giraffe, then you tell them, hey, they're in trouble in the wild, and you can help. Just by coming here, you can help, but you can do more. You don't start with, hey, these animals are going extinct, and, we're losing so many a day. You don't start with that. You start with getting to their heart first, getting them to care. I call it the 3 H's: heart, head, hand. So you go to the heart first, you touch their heart with these memorable experiences with these great ambassadors that are not going back to the wild. And then you go to their head and educate them about what they can do, how they can make a difference, and then maybe they'll lend a hand, whether it's, volunteering, money, technological, expertise. Yeah, just spread the word, that there is a way to do this. It's a monumental problem, but if everybody works on it, we have a chance.
Yeah, and Longneck Manor does have specific partners that you guys financially support?
Yeah,
Right.
conservation isn't just about writing checks and sending money, but it is important. Funds are really important, and we work with a lot of conservation organizations. Specifically, the major ones would be like the International Rhino Foundation, which has been around for like 30 years, and I've been on the board for about most of that time. And that is devoted just to rhino conservation in both in Africa and the Asian rhinos too. They do about $5 million a year, and that goes into a lot of different programs in the range countries, we call it, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, have you ever been over there to see what they're doing, like hands-on?
Yeah, I've visited most of the projects that we've supported, or some areas of it. I'm on the board of the International Rhino Foundation. In fact, I'm in charge of the whole African section. So I've been over there quite a few times. I've watched the frontline people, how dedicated they are, how dangerous it can be, because poachers shoot at you too if you and the rhino is, of course, the horn. There's a lot of pressure on security over there. So yeah, being on the front lines of conservation, you realize the more we can do to support the people over there, and those people that will then in turn protect the rhinos. But it's not an easy sell sometimes, because those communities don't have a lot of money, and it's very tempting if a poacher or a middleman comes and offers them a lot of money to shoot a rhino, and we're saying, well, we can give you give you a sustainable business, but it's not gonna be the big bonus that it is if you shoot a rhino. So there's there has to be a lot of trust involved and consistency. You have to keep coming back. Conservation is about people and helping communities. If you do that, then the animals will also survive. It's very difficult to know what guests are thinking after they're here. When they're here, they're smiling and they're happy, and to quantify that into the impact, the impression you're going to make on them later, is easier to do if you can touch each one of them personally. That's why we're small, because I think we can reach them more deeply, more effectively this way. In a big zoo, they do a good job, but you got thousands of people a day. You can't get to each one of them. That's why I don't want to get too big. What we'll do here is we'll make the experience even better. We'll charge more, but we're not going to increase the volume. As we do education for young adults or kids, how do we reach them? Because it's different than the adults. It worked for me, but I think I was already inclined to do that. It's not going to work for all the kids, but if you get them at the right age, and we think third grade's a really good age, they're just old enough to understand, and they're not so old that they got a lot of other interests. And I think we can get them to appreciate more responsible types of professions, whether it's with people or animals. Taking care of animals also makes you more compassionate about people, and makes the whole world a better place. But the only issue I have with that is it's the adults that need to save it now, because if we wait for those kids to grow up and we keep doing what we're doing, there's not going to be a lot left to save. So I'm all about getting the adult, do the kids, but their parents need to step up right now, because they're the decision makers. When the kids come up and they're the decision makers, we still got to leave them enough to make a decision about.